you see in football, sometimes the scoreline doesn't paint the picture. That is the prime embodiment of Juventus 1, Cagliari 1. It doesn't paint the picture. It was dominant. That Juventus performance was dominant. Let's just look into it. 77% possession, 21 shots, 702 passes. 85% of the game was in the opposition half in the final third. 71% duels won. Juventus controlled this game with and without the ball. Juventus created chances. Juventus should have had this game dead and buried by the 60th, 70th minute. But the way football works, if you don't take your chances, if you don't convert your chances into goals, you can always risk dropping points. This was one of the most smooth sailing performances up until the 80th minute. The last 10 minutes, it got chaotic and Juventus conceded their first goal of the season. Before we get into everything, if you're new, make sure to subscribe, make sure to hit the like, make sure to let me know what you think in the comments. Let's get into it. Now, it's only right we start off with Douglas Luiz, a £52 million acquisition. A player that I'm very familiar with, a player that I saw at Aston Villa last year dictate, run show, a player that contributed 20 goal contributions last year for Aston Villa, and he showcased his ability in the first, second and third phase. But ever since he touched down in Italy, in the Serie A, and put on the Juventus shirt, he's a player drowning. He's a player that at times showcases his ability, at times has glimpses, but is the consistency there? No. If anything, he's really looking like a hindrance. Like, let's just look at the penalty. He lets his man go down the right-hand side. You can clearly see his positioning is off. He's unaware of the opposition players around him. He lets the man go. Chase him down. You must prevent the cross from coming into the box. Gets back in time too late. The cross comes into the box, and then the icing on the cake. Lunging in when there's 3 Juventus players around the opposition player. There is no need to lunge in. There is no need to give the referee a chance or an opportunity to give a penalty away. It's a fragile area of the pitch. One mistimed tackle, one mistimed interception, one lapse of concentration can be the difference between a penalty and no penalty. And from watching his performance when he came onto the pitch, it felt very nonchalant, where on the ball, the glimpses were there, but off the ball, the tactical awareness, the defensive awareness, it wasn't there with Douglas Luiz. And I'm now looking at Douglas Luiz as a whole. A cameo off the bench today, off the ball, very, very, very poor. A cameo off the bench against RB Leipzig, very, very, very poor. That's 2 cameos off the bench that have resulted in 2 penalties by Douglas Luiz. Now, this is without a doubt a game that every Juventus player would be looking at themselves and screaming, we should have won. We should have had the game dead and buried. We should have scored 2, 3, 4 goals. Juventus created the opportunities. Juventus got the ball into dangerous areas. Juventus at times had 10 players in Cagliari's half. They dominated it on and off the ball. They suffocated them. But it's all good. Domination, total football, suffocating the opposition is only good when you win. When you drop points in a game that you should have won, it's not good enough. Dusan Vlahovic, for me, he had a good game. Just a month ago, a player that was under heavy criticism. I feel like he's elevated in the past few weeks, and today his performance was good. A well-converted penalty. He showed that side to his game where he can play with his back to goal. He can bring his teammates into the game. It's an area of his game that he's improving on week in, week out. But having said all of that, when you get an opportunity gifted to you, it just falls at your feet. You have to score that rebound towards the end of the game. You kill the game, you give your team that extra goal cushion, and in my opinion, it would have secured the 3 points for Juventus. But a player that Juventus really, really, really missed, and I feel like his substitution hindered the team. Koopmeiners. Now, if we were just to look at his first half performance, you could clearly see the chemistry he's building with Dusan. Dusan Vlahovic created the perfect opportunity for him down the left-hand side. There were moments, the nice flicks and tricks between the two. The two are playing in close proximity of one another and they're benefiting of one another. But the chemistry with Dusan Vlahovic, 3 chances created, 5 out of 8 duels won, and most importantly, and this is something that Juventus missed in the second half, a player that won possession back in Cagliari's half 5 times in 45 minutes. Now, Thiago Motta has a big problem at his hands. It's a big problem. If anything, it's a nice problem, but it's a problem that needs addressing after the international break. What is it? I have a question for you guys. What is Juventus's best 3? What is your ideal 3? Because I look at it and I see players that were deemed surplus to requirements at the beginning of the season, but it's been a resurgence. They're knocking on the door. They're demanding a starting spot. Players like Vlahovic, players like Weston McKennie. Then you've got the players that everybody expected to be starters. Thuram and Douglas Luiz, they are drowning. They are 2 players crying out for help. I wasn't really too impressed with Thuram's performance in the first half. But what Juventus need more than anything, especially after the international break, is consistency in the core of their team. The core of your team is your midfield. Your midfield goes out there to win the midfield battle. Win the midfield battle, you've won more than half the game. Juventus need consistency in midfield. They need 3 players that can play with each other week in, week out, that can understand one another's strengths and weaknesses, build some chemistry with one another out there on the pitch. For me, Juventus's best mid 3, I would probably go with the Weston McKennie, with the Fagioli, and with Koopmeiners as the orchestrator. Why? Because I feel like that 3 complements one another. You've got ball progression, you've got energy to cover ground, you've got players that can drop deep and play in tight areas, but most importantly, all 3 of them are energetic. All 3 of them have that form of physicality where they can cover ground. But it's definitely something Juventus should focus on after the international break, because rotation is good, but sometimes too much rotation can hinder a team. Having said all of that, make sure to subscribe, make sure to hit the like, make sure to let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll catch you guys on another one.